didn't have the ability to buy property. So I was trying to look for a non-traditional way to make money and create cash flow. And I'd heard about Airbnb. I was doing it with a spare room in my apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment that I had. And through the idea of a chance encounter with a stranger on a plane, he suggested that I start leveraging other people's properties. So I started leasing a bunch of properties, putting them on Airbnb, and then started building a really big business doing it that way. That's kind of how I got started. I eventually started teaching what I know to other people. And now I have over 100,000 customers and 10,000 people in my direct training around the world, 43 different countries. And I've helped all kinds of people start their own Airbnb business.
So this didn't, I mean, 2017 is not that long ago. That's when you started this?
Yeah. Well, actually, I was doing Airbnb a little bit before that, but I really went full time around that time. And just a few years ago, launched my online course and my online education. And now we do coaching where we work directly with people in wherever they live to help them get their own listings on Airbnb.
Congratulations. I mean, that's quite a success story. So when you first got into Airbnb, were you buying properties and doing Airbnb or?
No, I didn't have any properties at the time. So after 2008, I didn't own anything. All the properties during that crash, I lost everything, had to start over. So I basically just did rental arbitrage. I would rent a property for $1,000 a month, put it on Airbnb and make $3,000 a month. And so I was getting permission from the owners to do this. Of course, it was all with their blessing. And I was able to do that and get one property per month and start building, a nice, healthy, multiple 6-figure income. And then what I found is that as people started asking me to teach them how to do it, that I realized that other people could do it pretty much anywhere in the world because Airbnb is a global company and it's a global opportunity.
So you're not buying properties?
Well, I am. I do own properties now again. I am now owning properties, and some of the listings that I have, I do own, but the majority I do not. The majority are leases or lease options. We like to do lease options as well.
So what made you think you could go to somebody and say, hey, can I rent your property for $1,000 and I'm going to go over here and make $2,000?
I was coming from the investment world myself, being a real estate investor. Whenever, I was right out of college buying these properties and renting them out, there was really only 2 things I cared about. I cared about if somebody's going to pay the rent on the property on time and if they were going to take care of the property. And if they could do those 2 things, I would generally rent them. So when I met owners in person, I would just communicate to them that, look, I want to lease your property just like anyone else does. The only difference is I'm not going to live here. And some owners said no, some said yes, but I just saw it as a numbers game. The more people I talked to, the more yeses I'd get and the more properties I'd get.
What was the advantage you saw of doing Airbnb versus just rental properties?
Yeah, there's a lot of advantages. I mean, doing the short-term model, first of all, for most people who have no residential real estate or no investment real estate, to be able to jump in and make money almost immediately within a 24 to 48 hours, you can start seeing bookings come in on the site. I don't know any other model in real estate where you can make cash flow immediately or within the first week or 2. And so there's very low startup costs because really all you need is first month's rent and a deposit if it's a furnished property, or maybe a little bit more money if you're going to furnish it. So very little money to get in versus say 20% down for a typical property, which could be tens of thousands of dollars. You don't have to have credit. You don't have to take on any debt personally. There's all kinds of advantages. You also don't have any of the major repairs. Those are going to still be the responsibility of the owner. And then to top it off, you don't have to worry about evictions because you never have to evict with Airbnb guests. And of course, we know that's a huge, huge challenge right now in real estate with owners that can't evict tenants that aren't paying currently. So there's all kinds of advantages to not owning, although I'm still a believer that you should own real estate. This is a model to get started quickly. And I think it's a blend of the two is a really good way to go.
Let's go back for a moment. If you can remember the first person you approached to see if you could rent, and then could we call it a sublease or?
It's not a sublease because a sublease means that you're putting someone else in place who's then going to pay the rent. Since there's no additional contract, there's no additional agreement with a guest staying there, that's not a sublease. So technically it's not a sublease. And I explained this to the owners, but basically I just found a little 1-bedroom apartment. It was behind somebody's house, it was attached to their house, 1 bedroom with its own entrance. The lady had a for rent sign in the front yard. I just approached her and I said, can I look at your place? And when we went to the back and looked at the apartment, I said to her, this sounds really crazy, but can I rent your property and then have short-term guests stay here? And she had never heard of Airbnb. She didn't know what it was. She didn't care. She just was going based on me and what she thought about me. And she said, I want to think about it. It sounds kind of unusual, but she got back to me a few days later and she said, I'll do this with you. And so I rented that property in the very first month, I netted after all expenses about $1,600. And it made between $1,300 and $2,000 a month every month thereafter. And that was a tremendous amount of cash flow compared to when I owned properties and listed them and made $200 cash flow. So the short-term model is way, way higher income. And it's really the simplest way to explain it for anybody who's not familiar is it's the same game that hotels play. So hotels have a mortgage that they got to pay on their property, but they rent out by the night, which allows them to create essentially take something wholesale and sell it retail. So you're taking the month and you're selling the days. And so that's the model that I used, and that's the model that I teach.